You know what really messes with your head? Everyone around you constantly repeating the same message. Remembering someone's name is the bare minimum of respect. It is the ultimate sign of emotional intelligence, social awareness, being a decent human being. Like whether you can remember a new person's name within 3 seconds and actually use it the next time you see them, somehow determines whether you're reliable, thoughtful, or worth getting close to others. So, if you blank on a coworker's name right after the team intro, if you run into your neighbor and all you can manage is an awkward, "Hey," if your brain goes completely offline every time someone new gets introduced, and you just nod along hoping no one notices, you immediately spiral. You feel careless, cold, like you don't care about people. You start wondering if you're just fundamentally bad at relationships, like maybe you were born missing some social gene. But there is a whole group of people who hear all that social pressure and think quietly to themselves, "I'm not being dismissive, I just can't hold on to names." And it is not because they're self-absorbed or rude or disrespectful. It is because they've stumbled onto a truth most people spend their whole lives refusing to admit. The human brain was never designed to store random name labels. Forgetting someone's name has never been a failure, and it is definitely not a personality flaw. If you'd rather actually listen to someone's story, then force yourself to drill their name into your head. If "please remember my name" gives you a weird knot of anxiety, if you've ever forgotten someone's name, been honest about it, and felt relieved instead of ashamed, this is for you. Because what I'm about to say will completely change how you see yourself. Society has fundamentally misread people who can't hold on to names. We've taken a normal cognitive difference and turned it into a social defect that needs fixing. The beliefs we were raised with have put millions of people through years of unnecessary self-doubt, and nobody ever told them the truth. This isn't a lack of ability. It is your brain making a completely reasonable choice. It is a cognitive advantage that has been wildly underestimated. Let's start with where everyone gets it wrong. For decades, popular thinking and even parts of traditional psychology treated people who forget names as somehow deficient, not trying hard enough, lacking social skills, cold, closed off. The logic was simple. The first step in any relationship is learning someone's name. So if you can't do that, you must not be putting in the effort. You don't respect people, you're not paying attention. That one-size-fits-all judgment has loaded up countless people with shame they never deserved. They keep forcing themselves to play by rules that don't fit them, keep failing, and keep sinking deeper into self-criticism. Then, in a 2016 study from the University at Buffalo, researchers asked a question nobody had properly explored before. What if some people are just naturally less wired for remembering names? Not because they're careless, not because they're disrespectful, but purely because of cognitive preference and brain structure. They categorize this as a non-social cognitive difference. And after tracking over 2,000 healthy adults, they found something that flipped the conventional wisdom on its head. People who consistently forget names don't have psychological issues. In fact, they score higher than average on empathy, observation, deep understanding of others, and emotional perception. What that means is people who can't hold on to names aren't running below capacity. They're running above it. Their brains operate on a system that prioritizes the actual person over surface level, labels a system that lets them skip past meaningless tags and go straight to genuine human connection. Here is what is actually happening inside the brain of someone who forgets names. Your dopamine reward system and prefrontal cortex work differently than most people's. When someone who is good at names meets a new person, their brain immediately locks onto the verbal label stores the name as a key social data point, while the conversation itself, the emotional shifts, the body language, all get bumped to secondary. They can quickly file away a string of syllables, but they might completely miss the tension in someone's voice, the hesitation in their eyes, the small nervous gestures. Their dopamine hit comes from completing the social task. I got the name. From the brief satisfaction of external validation. You don't need a label to feel satisfied. A real conversation, a subtle expression, a moment of genuine sharing that is your brain's highest reward. Way more meaningful than nailing someone's name. You don't need to pass a social quiz. To feel like you matter, you already have enough internal fuel. You get what you need from real emotional exchange. And here is the key part. Some studies suggest higher prefrontal cortex activity when processing faces, emotions, context, and emotional information compared to processing verbal labels or words, which means you're not failing to remember. Your brain is actively choosing to prioritize warmer, more meaningful information. Over cold label storage, you're not zoning out, you're not brushing people off. Your brain is processing, connecting, interpreting, empathizing, building the kind of deep understanding that only happens when you were not bogged down by meaningless symbols. This isn't some new theory. Some of the greatest minds in history are often described as having had this trait. Einstein regularly forgot the names of his assistants and colleagues and quietly worked out the core of relativity. Newton, deep in isolation during his most productive years, often couldn't recall the names of people around him. Virginia Woolf spent her life focused on inner worlds and language. Maya Angelou openly said she remembered souls, not names. None of them were being disrespectful. They understood something most people don't. Real connection between people was never stored in a name. It lives in the resonance between two minds, two hearts. True respect was never about memorizing a label. It is about actually seeing someone. People who forget names know this in their bones. I can fully feel and understand another person without needing to remember their name to prove it. That is not arrogance. That is deep self-awareness. Research by Dr. Bella DePaulo suggests something striking. People who struggle with names but excel at listening tend to have deeper, more stable, more genuine close relationships than average. Why? Because they don't define a relationship by a label. They don't treat remembering a name as a social checkbox. They choose to connect because someone's spirit resonates with theirs, not to fulfill a social obligation. They understand something crucial. How fully you're present with someone directly determines the quality of that relationship. When you're not anxious about names, you can listen more completely, respond more honestly. You don't burn out. You don't go through the motions. You don't treat socializing like a chore. You show up as your full, real self. No performing, no people-pleasing, no trying too hard, just genuinely being with someone. And all of that comes from your brain's natural cognitive wiring, from your commitment to real connection. Here is something that might completely shift your perspective. In Japan, there is a cultural norm that suggests forcing yourself to remember names can create unnecessary social anxiety. In workplaces, at gatherings, on campuses, people can naturally ask for a name again, and nobody takes offense. There are even social guides that treat forgetting names as normal, and asking again as a sign of sincerity, not rudeness. Can you imagine a culture where forgetting someone's name isn't just tolerated? It is actually seen as a sign that you were genuinely listening, genuinely present, completely normal. Meanwhile, in most Western and East Asian societies, forgetting a name marks you as rude, careless, dismissive. We've turned name recall into a pass-fail social exam, instead of recognizing it as a natural ability that varies from person to person. People who forget names have opted out of that pointless test. They know who they are. They know what they care about. They know they're after real connection, not socially mandated performance. That kind of clarity and self-acceptance is something people trapped by social conditioning will never fully understand. But we also have to be honest about the other side, because real self-acceptance requires balance and clear thinking. Forgetting names has its limits. It won't make you rude the way society claims, and it won't destroy your social life. But here is what you actually need to watch out for. Using "I can't remember names" as a reason to avoid people altogether, as a shield to stay closed off, to dodge connection, to justify not putting yourself out there. Because real growth, the kind that actually changes you, happens in genuine human interaction. If you're always hiding in your comfort zone, because you're afraid of forgetting a name, refusing to let people in, You might miss the relationships that could genuinely warm you and sustain you. The line is clear. The healthy version is accepting your cognitive difference, not being ashamed of it and not letting it shut you down. The unhealthy version is using it as an excuse to avoid growth, avoid connection, and slowly drift into isolation. The healthiest place to be. Accept that you forget names. Don't apologize for it. And don't let it make you pull back. You can be upfront with people, tell them you're not great with names, but you're fully present with them. You can forget what someone's called and still remember exactly how they made you feel. You can skip the social performance and still hold on to genuine honesty. You're not using name forgetting to escape life. You're using self-acceptance to show up more authentically in every relationship. So every interaction comes from a real place, not a rehearsed one. What does that look like in practice? If you genuinely can't hold on to names, you don't need to feel guilty. You don't need to force yourself to become someone who drills names into their head. Your brain is built for empathy, for listening, for deep understanding. That is not a problem. That is genuinely rare and valuable. The world desperately needs people who can set aside surface labels and actually feel other people. People who aren't held hostage by social scripts and stay focused on real connection. In an era where everyone treats name recall as an EQ test and surface-level socializing as the measure of success, being someone who is at peace with forgetting names and still shows up with full sincerity might be the most countercultural, most valuable person you can be. But be honest with yourself. Check in every now and then. Am I forgetting names because I've genuinely accepted how my brain works? Or am I using it as cover because I'm scared of people? Can I be upfront about my limitations and still lean into others, still value every relationship? Because a healthy cognitive difference makes you freer and more grounded, not more closed off and more distant. This is a choice rooted in self-acceptance, not a retreat driven by fear. If you can honestly say that, forgetting names is just your brain's natural state, not a defense mechanism, then you figured out something most people never do. What matters most between people was never a name. It is seeing a whole, real, living human being. You'll come to understand that the most important, most lasting, most loyal relationship in your life, beyond your connections with others, is the one you have with yourself. Accepting that you forget names means accepting your imperfections, your uniqueness, your right to not conform to every social rule. That acceptance doesn't require compromise, doesn't require pretending, doesn't require forcing yourself into a mold. It has always been there, always honest, always exactly what you needed. We spend our whole lives searching to be understood and accepted, and we keep forgetting that the first person who needs to accept us is ourselves. Something as small as forgetting names turns out to be a mirror. It shows us whether we're willing to let go of outside judgment and stay true to who we actually are. So the next time someone asks why you forgot their name right after the intro, why you couldn't call them by name when you ran into them, why you always need a reminder, you don't owe anyone guilt. You don't owe anyone a forced explanation. If you feel like sharing, you can tell them about cognitive differences. Tell them about the university at Buffalo Research. Tell them that forgetting names isn't disrespect. It is being more focused on feeling someone, on actually hearing them. Or you can just smile and say, I'm not great with names, but I was genuinely listening to you. I really do care. That kind of honesty tends to land warmer than any perfectly recalled name ever could. And honestly, that is the whole point. People who forget names have already found what everyone else is chasing through surface-level socializing, sincerity. Not memorizing a cold label, but seeing a whole, alive, warm human being. That has never been a flaw, it has always been a gift. In a world where everyone's rushing to perform and scrambling to fit in, the people willing to drop the act and just be real with each other are the rarest ones in the room. You don't need to be the person who remembers every name at the party. You just need to be the person who genuinely shows up for everyone they meet. Your difference isn't your weakness, it is your light. It is what sets you apart. It is the core of why you're capable of building relationships that actually go deep. If this resonated with you, if it finally let you put down some of the guilt and self-doubt you've been carrying, follow this channel. We dig into human psychology, self-acceptance, and the real truth about how people connect. If this video helped you break free from a social script that was never meant for you and helped you see yourself more clearly like it, save it, share it with someone in your life who also can't hold on to names. Let them know they were never wrong. They were never less than. I'm genuinely grateful you made it this far. I'll keep putting out content to help you accept yourself, quiet the inner noise, and rebuild your confidence from the ground up. I believe every video will hit somewhere real and help you live with more ease, more freedom, more peace. Always remember, forgetting names doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It doesn't mean you're rude. It doesn't mean you're bad at people. It just means you care more about real connection. You're more focused on who someone actually is. You are sincere enough. You are kind enough. You are absolutely worth liking. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and never miss a chance to grow. Like, share, and drop your story in the comments. Let's walk this road of self-acceptance together, further than we've ever gone before. See you in the next one. Stay true to yourself. Live with quiet strength.